Hi, and welcome back to Dr. Jordan B. Peterson's 12 Rules for Life. Today we have rule number 7, our discussion about it. And rule number 7 here is pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. This was a long chapter. It had a lot of things in it. So we'll see how long this video is. But I think I was looking forward to reading this because I also, struggle with meaning. I think a lot of people do. Some people find that in their faith, and other people find that in what they do every day. And so reading something about this definitely piqued my interest. But let's just get right into it. Pages 164 through 173. Peterson's talking about delayed gratification. That reminded me of, I studied economics in college. It just reminded me of like the discount factor that people have. So people definitely value the present more than the future. If you were to have $100, if you were to receive $100, would you rather receive it today or would you rather receive it in 2 years? And most people would say today because they discount the future. They don't see it as valuable. And plus you could do a lot more with that $100 today to transform it into more than $100 in 2 years. But besides that fact, it is trying to figure out at least the economic question is, where would you be indifferent between $100 today and $100 at some point in the future? But Peterson is right. It's observed in pretty much everyone where we discount the future for the gratification and the pleasure of now, which is expedient. And he says that you can make some small sacrifices, but it may not lead to like your big gains. So if you make larger sacrifices today, you will hopefully reap those rewards in the future for which you ultimately want. It reminded me of, it's one of the most, I think, upvoted, most memorable Reddit posts. Someone said that they changed their life because they started thinking about, I have my present self and my future self and my past self, which is pretty understandable. We think in past, present, and future, just like, is it the Christmas Carol? Is that what it is? With, Ebenezer Scrooge, with that story, the ghost of Christmas past, present, and future. But what you do today is for your future self. So if that is, I meal prep today for the week, and that is preparing for my future self. Because if I didn't meal prep and have my lunches ready, then I would have to spend a majority of my nights just cooking. I couldn't enjoy myself or do whatever I needed to do that day, and I have to spend a few hours on Sunday to help myself in the future. And so when I get to that point, let's just say it's tomorrow, which would be Monday night, that would allow me to thank my past self. I can think back, my past self took the time yesterday to make this for me, and all I have to do is pack it in my lunch and my lunch box and put it in the fridge and then heat it up in the microwave, and it's good to go. And I can thank my past self. But then I'm still in my present self, and I have to think about, what would my future self need? What would be helpful? And when I'm meal prepping, it is somewhat fun. I like listen to music or YouTube or talk to someone. It can be a little bit more enjoyable, but it's not exactly what I want to be doing in the moment. But it makes me feel a whole lot better afterwards, knowing that I helped my future self. And then when I'm in that present moment, in that future self, I fast forward, it's Monday, and I don't have to prepare my lunch. It is an amazing feeling to thank my past self and to really just be grateful for what I had done. And I would feel a heck of a lot worse if I, at the end of the day on Sunday, if I didn't meal prep at all, and then on Monday I had to do everything. Like, that would make me feel a whole lot worse. So you have to learn to manage that delayed gratification. He also talks about in these pages more successful people understand the delayed gratification and they're willing to make their sacrifices. He even goes into Socrates. He talks about Socrates, and he discusses how Socrates, even in the face, it's more shying away. Well, no, it's not. He, even in the face of death, the music's coming to an end, he still stood by his inner voice and did what he thought was the correct thing to do, which that way his future self could feel better about his past self. I guess because if he were to have just left Athens, he would be resentful and disappointed in himself for not sticking to what he knew was right and what he believed in. And instead, he decided to remain silent. He abstained. He pleaded the fifth if he lived in modern day United States, but he decided to delay that expedient, that imminent pleasure of preserving his own life for the sake of his future self. And I guess everybody looking back on him knows that what he did was he spat in the face of fear and anger, and he stuck with what he thought was right. He stuck to his guns. And that's something that's very hard to do. It does seem pretty unrealistic to do so. I mean, I know Peterson talked about Christ doing that with Satan and being hungry, and so he brought in Socrates to make it a bit more reasonable for everyone to do, but that is not an easy thing to do, especially when it's your own life in your hand. I mean, it's pretty easy just to leave Athens and go somewhere else, preserve your life. And that sacrifice that Socrates made to preserve his moral compass, he eventually lost his life, but it wasn't just him losing his life. His family and his friends also have to deal with that as well. That's the same thing like something with like suicide. It may be freeing for yourself, but it's becomes a prison for everyone else that knew you and that was around you. And I mean, yeah, that is pretty selfish to not think of what you're doing to those people around you. So it's definitely, I mean, I understand where Peterson's coming from with the Socrates example, but it's still very hard to live up to in situations like that. But I think the idea is still to try to not morally corrupt yourself, because your future self will be happy with you. You will have more sleep, more restful nights and less sleepless nights thinking about what you have done in the past and everything of that sort. Okay. Page 177, Peterson talks about if you have consciousness of self, you are aware of the evil and the hate and the resent that you can have, and if you're aware of that, then you can also put that onto other people, and that is what makes life so hard. Others are willing and knowingly doing horrible things to other people, other creatures, other things. And somehow they're living with themselves, somehow they're dealing with it. And knowing that that's out there, I mean, that's enough to prevent you from sharing the mammoth that Peterson talks about. It's hard to build relationships knowing that people have such a capability for evil, and it can be very hard trusting other people in this world with that in mind. And with self-consciousness, it is one thing to have that evil within yourself and to dislike yourself or something in that matter, but to produce that onto other people is just another thing that hurts the world greatly. and I think corrupts you even more. It will morally shatter you even more so if you are to wrap others up in your despicableness. And I don't think you will like yourself. You will think of yourself even less if you wrap others into that. Okay. Page 180. Okay. Here he talks about, Carl Jung, how no tree can reach heaven if the roots do not grow deep into and reach down into hell. And he also mentions that it is, here I'm reading the middle part of the page on page 180. Christ is forever he who determines to take personal responsibility for the full depth of human depravity. So he's saying that Christ is taking responsibility for all the pain, and not just pain, but everything evil Christ has to take full responsibility for, and Christ has to allay those evils, those temptations, the temptations that Satan is offering him. And even though Christ is trying to do the right thing to reach that enlightenment within heaven, he also has to face the cavernous and deep trenches that is hell. But Peterson doesn't really mention it in here, but I think that it's not just Christ that has to do that. That's every person every single day. We all have to make these decisions, whether that be helping someone with their groceries if they're having trouble lifting them, or to just ignore and go about your business. I mean, that's just a small detail in your life, but that is also something that helps define you, and that's the temptations that you are fighting. Do I forego my time for right now if I'm going to help that person with their groceries? And that's a responsibility we all have to take on. It's not just Christ, but we all make these decisions every single day. And I think that we all have to somehow fight through the deep roots in hell in order to reach heaven. And we just have to learn how to resist these temptations, to sacrifice our pleasure in the meantime, so that way we have more gratification and are happier with ourselves in the future. Page 182. Christ abstains from the bread because bread is little use to a man who has betrayed his soul. And it reminded me of Viktor E. Frankl's, I mentioned it before, Man's Search for Meaning. And when he discussed it in his time in the concentration camps, he said that even though he was starving and angry, and there was a lot of things to hate, you still have a choice to be a good person, no matter the situation. And he said that he made the choice, and many other people, every single day, to remain civilized, to talk with one another and be there for each other, even in the deepest and hardest parts of almost anyone's lives. That's one of the hardest things you could ever go through. They all chose to try to stay on the good path and to remain good people, which is very, very difficult. But you have to abstain from the bread, and you do not want to corrupt your soul morally. I think you will find that you won't find your life meaningful if everything that you do is just for pleasure and you don't feel good afterwards. And like he said in the previous rule, you don't have to know the why, but you do know what is right and what is wrong. And then he also discusses on page 185, Christ foregoes the power over everyone in the domain of the kingdom of earth. And if he denies that temptation, he's able to reach, heaven in the end. And that's a choice that Christ has made. And I know I said it before in this video, but we all have to make these decisions every single day too, to resist these temptations and aim for the good that we know that is being. Okay, pages 185 through 193. These are the critiques on Christianity. Peterson, especially in this chapter, has used a lot of biblical stories and to help convey his message. And it does seem right to involve these critiques. I think he uses the Bible because it is well known for many. Even if you haven't read it, you at least know some of the stories, some of the names, and you can learn the moral lessons that it teaches you. It's the same thing as like Aesop's fables. It just helps you to distinguish what you may find is right and what you may find is wrong. And in these critiques, he mentions Nietzsche and how his critiques are fairly valid. If Christ is making the ultimate sacrifice, then what are we going to do? We can't ever live up to that. And you can't really change much on earth in order to get to heaven. And it's just easy to go with the status quo and to devalue everything now. If heaven is the ultimate, is the pinnacle, is the ultimate thing that you want to reach, then everything on earth doesn't really matter all that much. It's just about getting to heaven. And that is a tough pill to swallow, because I think a lot of people do. If they believe in heaven, they know that it's going to be all right. Once I die, I'll get to go to the most wonderful place for the rest of my life. But that still doesn't mean that it doesn't matter what you do now. Because if you're corrupting yourself morally, if nothing really matters and you're nihilistic and you're just going about your day, living off your pleasures, then I think when you are on your deathbed, you're going to close your eyes and you're probably going to think, well, I think I had a lot of fun some of the time, but I don't think it was worth it. And I don't think a lot of things went right in my life because of the choices I made. And I think that's why Peterson introduces Dostoevsky and the stories and the books that Dostoevsky has introduced, because while Dostoevsky doesn't refute any of these claims, there are weaknesses and faults in the Christianity, and in Christianity, it still doesn't make it okay to not do the right thing, even though it may be hard and it may seem unrealistic and irrational to do the right thing. In the end, your future self, you will be happier with yourself. I know I'm just kind of talking in circles here with everything, but I guess that's the important part, is to remember that while we're delaying our gratification now, we'll be able to close our eyes at night and sleep peacefully knowing that we did the right thing. Okay. Page 195, they talk about how, Carl Jung and Freud discuss how an idea is like a living, breathing creature, and it just grasps onto you. And it reminded me of the V for Vendetta movie, with at the end, V, the guy who wears the Guy Fawkes mask, he's come to the final enemy that he wants to kill, and Mr. Creedy says, Like, why won't you die? Why won't, we've shot you with hundreds of bullets and somehow you won't die? And V says, behind this mask, there is more than flesh. Behind this mask, Mr. Creedy, is an idea, and ideas are bulletproof. And that's, I just got goosebumps right there just thinking about it. I mean, that's very, very powerful, because an idea can spread, and it doesn't just live in one person, but I mean, this right here, this medium, this YouTube, I am expressing my ideas right now, and whether you agree or disagree or think about them, they're latching onto you through YouTube, and from there it manifests itself in yourself, and you can spread that idea to other people, and as we continue on, these ideas, they continue to live inside of us. They are bulletproof, and even though I may die, this video, as long as YouTube is around, will stay forever. And even if YouTube some way disappears, if someone has seen this video and they discuss it with another person, it will extend from generation to generation, just as we know how Socrates stood tall at the hour of his death, and how Nietzsche and Dostoevsky and all of these people thought, and their ideas, it still lives on forever. And with that, keeping in mind the idea, you will always remember the ideas that you had and have in the past, and what you did and how you acted with those ideas. And you should probably do the thing that is right with those ideas. And then finally, on page 201 at the very bottom, he says, meaning is the way, the path of life more abundant, the place you live when you are guided by love and speaking truth, and when nothing you want or could possibly want takes any precedence over precisely that. You can't manifest meaning. I think you can only do what you think is right and follow that moral compass. And this part, his last few pages, the meaning as the higher good section, I was reading it so quickly, it reminded me of, well, I had Charlie Chaplin's voice in my head. I was reading it as the great dictator speech that he gives in there, and I mean that is a beautiful speech as well. And in essence, he quotes, that the kingdom of God is not just for one man, but for all men and women or whatever, but it is for everyone, and you can live your life as good, and we do not have to live by dictators, and dictators will die, and liberty lives on forever as people die. And I mean, it is also going back to the idea principle, where these ideas, they will not die, they live forever, and these bad, morally corrupted people are taken by greed, but in essence, in human nature, deep down in your soul, you can be a good person, and you know what is good, and Chaplin discusses that, or doesn't even discuss it, he's just giving his speech that the human person is good. The savageness of man, or the savage man that I think it was Rousseau, is can be good, especially when you introduce them into civilization that we have like ours. It is and can be good, and we need to live by that, and in doing so we can find more meaning in our life. And at the end of the day, you know what is right and wrong, and you got to make that choice. Delay that pleasure now, and you'll be happier in the future. Delay that gratification, so that way you do what is right, not what is expedient. The next rule is rule number 8. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Till next time.